I wasn't there. It's those awful people on city council.
Wasn't me. Yeah. And then go look at the YouTube video, and there's Brian. It's like,
Oh, lead the charge. Probably maintenance. That would be my guess. If it was the public works director, my guess is he was bringing up maintenance.
pretty sure it could have been it.
Yeah. All right. Well, it looks like it's 7. We're close enough to 7.
Yeah, I think we can go live whenever you guys are ready. Thanks.
All right. We will call the meeting to order at 7. And Doug, will you call the roll?
Alder Holmquist.
Here.
Mr. Stein.
Here.
Mr. Grice.
Here.
Ms. Fox.
Here.
Mr. Homburg.
Here.
Ms. Fallett.
Here.
Alder Moore and Mr. Conrad are excused.
All right. Item 3 is a motion for approval of the minutes of the September 12th, 2022. Is there a motion?
Move approval?
A second?
No second.
All right. Any edits? Chris?
Page 3, bottom of the page, condition 5. The approval includes sign revisions as, the approval includes the sign and then add end striping revisions as discussed. We had both, and I think, Doug, you were going to work with them on both of those to make sure it was clear.
Yep.
Any other items? Seeing none, all those in favor of the minutes from the September 12th as edited, say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, minutes have been passed. Appearances. Is there anybody here to appear on about an item that is not on the agenda? Everybody here is for an agenda item. How about on Zoom land? If you're on Zoom and you're here for an item that is not on the agenda, can you please, raise your hand or indicate? Seeing none, we'll close the appearance section. We have no unfinished business tonight. We'll go on to 6A, which is a public hearing on the request by Dave Jones, Inc., represented by Sign Art Studio for approval of a new wall sign, 2300 Kilgust Road. This is case S14-2022. And who do we have?
Chris goes in there.
Chris?
We're working there, so I have to abstain on this.
Sounds good. And do we have anybody on Zoom to walk us through it? Josh?
Yep. So what we were presenting is just the last piece of their campus that needs a sign, just as a call out for what that building is. The purpose of the building is for traffic as it goes in and out.
Perfect. Is there anybody else to speak on the public hearing section? Seeing none, we'll close that, move on to 6B, which is a consideration of action on the request by Dave Jones, Inc., represented by Sign Art Studio for approval of new wall sign at 2300 Kilgust Road, case number S14-2022. Doug.
Thank you. The request here is the one new wall sign to the Fleet and Facilities Building at 2300 Kilgust Road, part of the larger Dave Jones campus over there. The wall sign itself, about 39 square feet of text with just over 5 square feet for the logo. This is a non-illuminated acrylic sign that is facing south. The zoning district here is Community Design District, and all new wall signs within this district need to be reviewed by the Planning Commission. Wall signs are allowed a maximum of 1 square foot per linear foot of building facade with a maximum of 150, and the facade here along Kilgust is approximately 50 feet in width. The signage is typically measured by the smallest single rectangle that can be drawn around the sign, and that equates to just over 45 square feet within the 50 square feet allowed. The previously approved CSP for the larger campus, the comprehensive sign plan, only included on-site directional, did not propose any wall signage for the building, and this appears to comply with the requirements of the city's sign code. With that, staff recommends approval. Thanks.
Brandon, do you mind starting us off?
This is pretty straightforward. I don't have any comment. I think the sign looks fine.
All right. Rob?
No comment. Looks good.
Susan?
Same, I think it's great. This is the whole plan.
Yeah. Let's see, where do we have you? Corrine?
It looked fine. And Susan, I can't actually hear you.
Me neither.
Can you hear me now? Maybe I'm not close enough.
Is
that better?
Quiet.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's better.
Okay.
I think we found Chris's mic. It's been
okay.
relocated. All right. Do we have a motion for approval?
I would move to approve.
A second?
Second.
All right. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Item has been passed. Moving on to item 6C, which is a public hearing on Northport Development. Thank you. Corporation and Dream Lane Real Estate Group on the request for the consideration of a precise implementation plan, PIP, called Broadway Lofts and Townhomes for the site located at approximately 1208 East Broadway for 75-unit residential development. This is case 228-2022. And who do we have tonight to walk us through the public hearing piece? And so during the public hearing section, if you can just kind of walk through kind of your development and what it is that kind of you're hoping to do here, and then you won't have any questions back from us in the public hearing section, but if someone is here either in person or on Zoom that has questions, we entertain the opportunity for them to ask questions. Okay. And then we close this and go on to the next section.
Okay. All right, well, good evening, everyone. My name is Sean O'Brien with Northport Development. This is Lane Hang, Dream Lane Real Estate. And we also have Kevin Burrow from Canoki Bruce Architecture on the Zoom meeting as well, joining us tonight. We're back here for our PIP pre-hearing to get your feedback on our plan. We started working with the Plan Commission, I believe, in November of last year. Time has really flown.
You're going to steal my mic, aren't you?
Of course. Do you want me to lean in, or? Okay.
Should be good.
So just a recap of the project. So this is about 1208 East Broadway. It's right behind the Shell gas station on the White Horse property. We are purchasing 2 lots from different family members of the White Horse family, and we proposed a 75-unit workforce affordable housing project. A portion of the units would be set aside at incomes that range between 30% of county median income to 60% of county median income, and then we will also have some income restricted units, or what we call market rate units. The site has 3 different buildings. We really wanted to create a neighborhood feel for this site, so it's a 75-unit project. 63 units are in one 4-story building in the center, and we also have 2 6-unit townhome buildings. All the townhomes have their own garage, and then we also have underground parking under the 4-story building. In total, we have about 136 stalls. I think we need about 135 per the city ordinance. So we do have ample parking. One thing that you'll see on this site plan that's actually going to be a little bit different when we come back for the actual hearing is that if you look at the upper right corner, there is a secondary kind of ancillary access point. The property that is north of us is owned by the Wisconsin Department of Transportation. And on our CSM that we had with the project, when we put it under contract, it showed an easement to utilize that site. Well, we actually had a call with the Department of Transportation last week, and they informed us that actually it's an illegal driveway that's there, and that they don't have any intention to let us purchase the site or use the site, as they may be using that to kind of redo Highway 51 at some point. They also said, based on kind of the right in, right out at that location, it wouldn't be, in their opinion, safe or desirable, because basically someone could, kind of scoot across a couple lanes of traffic and then take a quick hard left and go, past Denny's. So we will be relying on the access that we will have basically out of the main, private drive that can get you on both sides of the traffic, and replacing that kind of access point with a couple additional stalls. So we'll end up with, instead of 136, maybe 138, something along those lines, which I think is ample parking. I know that one of the things that came up in November when we were talking about this site was access to transportation. We will be working with B-Cycle to put B-Cycle stations here. We are currently doing that with our Fitchburg project. We're actually working with the city of Fitchburg, and are one of the first 3 investors, I guess, that they're calling us to do the B-Cycle stations. And we just view it as a really great amenity for workforce housing, or we're doing a combination of workforce housing and senior in Fitchburg. And so just to have the access to transportation, but also access to leisure to be able to get out on those bikes and take them around, I think it's great. It is interesting, like, we're all kind of subject to the current world that we live in with supply issues and delays. I just got an email today that said the bikes are on back order, so we're not getting them until spring. But hopefully a lot of things will be worked out by next year. So we're working through that process there, and we think it will be a great fit here. I've also been told that there's possibly in the works, an option for the city to add a bus stop nearby this location, which would be fantastic and really kind of help. Otherwise, besides that, again, I've seen this, every week, month for the last 7 or 8 months. So to me, it just, it seems like not much has changed. So I know that you all haven't looked at it that often, but really not much has changed since the last time we talked. We had to make some little bit of changes on the stormwater ponds. Carp C really pushed back on letting us have those stormwater ponds within the 30-foot no grading area. So we were able to accommodate kind of moving those out of the 30-foot no grading. We had a phone call with Doug and Carp C, and can make it work, kind of following their state requirements. So we made that tweak, but besides that, nothing else has really changed. Do have a lot of sustainability, type things going into the project. We're going to put a sizable solar panel system on the roof, and we're hoping to do a couple of the charging stations, in the garage along with the bikes. The last thing I would say about the project is we did get our environmental back, and we'll be able to get a closure letter from the DNR for those 2 sites, and we did get our soils report back, and this site will need quite a bit of undercutting and geopiers no matter what goes on here. So there's quite a bit of extra work that's going to need to be done to get this project to move forward, but we're working through those issues, and really excited to get your feedback on the plans tonight. In terms of design, one of the comments that came back last time was we'd like to see some more brick come up the building, so we've added some brick. I'd like to get some feedback there. And then just overall, other comments that, things that you'd like to see from our various plans, before we come back next time for your vote.
All right. And
Anything you want to add?
Pretty well.
Okay.
all right. Kevin, is there anything that you have to add for that?
I don't have at this time, but I can answer any questions that may come up.
Okay. Is there anybody else on Zoom that would like to speak on during the public hearing section? Seeing none, we will move on, or we'll close 6C and move on to 6D, which is the pre-hearing conference for the Northport Development Corporation and Dream Lane Real Estate Group on the request for consideration of a precise implementation plan called Broadway Lofts and Townhomes for the site located at approximately 1208 East Broadway for a 75-unit residential development, case 228-2022. Doug.
Thank you. So I will just kind of run through some of the details here. It's been a little while since this was discussed. We have at least one new commission member as well. So I'll just run through some of the highlights from the staff report. So as mentioned, there are a total here of 75 residential units split across a 63-unit apartment building, as well as 2 6-unit townhomes. There'll be both underground and surface parking, as well as over 57,000 square feet of green space. Completion here is estimated to be summer of 2024. The general development plan for this, the sort of general master plan for the site, was recommended by the Plan Commission at their November 8th meeting in 2021, with City Council approval the following week at November 15th, 2021. As far as the precise implementation plan, it should include detailed construction engineering plans, related detailed documents and schedules, and it should conform substantially to the general development plan. Each of those details is outlined in the staff report as to the parameters with it, which it needs to comply. And at this time, there is no revision to the GDP proposed. The site zoning for this is Community Design District, CDD, which should include a compatible mix of residential, commercial, industrial, or open space uses, which realize the goals of the comprehensive plan. And it should also serve, within the CDD, uses should also serve regional community needs for moderate cost housing. One thing of note here, there was a lot of discussion during the GDP of the land use. Since that GDP approval, there has been an uptick in interest for the adjacent parcels, with city staff expecting some sort of commercial possible mixed use proposal coming through for those in the coming months as well. As far as the certified survey map, the applicant is aware that the two parcels, as outlined at this point, will need to be combined for this to proceed. And so that'll be Lot 1 of CSM 15061 and Lot 4 of CSM 8819. And I understand that that's in the works as well. So that'll be coming forward. As mentioned, the applicant successfully received WIDA 9% tax credits, which will be converted into about $11 million of equity for the project. Additionally, they received funding from Dane County, as well as home funds as well. And finally, the applicant is also looking to request some TIF assistance due to some of the site challenges that were mentioned. The majority of the units, 56 of those, will be rent restricted between 30% and 50 to 60% of the area median income for a minimum of 30 years, with the remaining balance of 19 units being market rate, non-rent restricted. In terms of architecture, the brick facade has been increased, extending to the third floor in some places. That differs to the approved GDP, where it extended to the second. So feedback had been for some more masonry, and the applicant is certainly looking for the Commission's opinion on that this evening. Balconies present on all of the upper level apartment building units with walk-up units and porches for the ground floor. Parking is a point to discuss tonight. In addition to the at-grade changes that may be there, given the eastern driveway that will be getting closed off. The plans show 63 underground stalls, but it appears that 7 of those are tandem stalls. Something to discuss and hear from the applicant there in terms of the access for those, and whether, if that design is final, how they would be counted, and if additional stalls may be needed, just given the accessibility of those. Just with the way the design looked, it didn't look as if there was a separate drive aisle for those. So counting all the stalls, not including or accounting for the tandem stalls, it would be over city standards at the moment, but again, something worth discussing. Madison Metro, that discussion has certainly advanced since the GDP was approved last November. Possibility of a more site-adjacent bus stop being included, in addition to the Madison B-cycle as well. In terms of landscaping, a full landscaping plan was provided as part of the PIP with 30 canopy trees proposed. That includes canopy trees as well as evergreens that certainly give a buffer to the Beltline to the south, as well as East Broadway to the north. There was some discussion there at the GDP about the terrace trees and sort of the need for those. So the Commission should discuss how the landscape plan meets that, and if any changes are recommended. In terms of the points, accounting for all stalls, including those underground, the plan is 1,200 points over landscape, so there is a lot of landscaping here on the site, in addition to some pretty substantial existing trees as well. The green space itself, that's just another point of clarification. The definition or the terms that we use between the GDP and the PIP have differed. There was just over 69,000 square feet of usable open space as defined in the GDP, with just over 57,000 of green space here in this PIP. That change, while substantial, there doesn't appear to be much of a change to the building footprint, so just some clarification on that would be needed, just to make sure there's not a change to the GDP. As far as lighting, 15 light fixtures are proposed, with no light trespass being evident. The stormwater environmental corridor, as mentioned, city staff was part of a call with the applicant and CARPC staff about the environmental corridors as well as the buffers. And the Dane County Water Quality Plan requires a 30-foot wetland no-grade setback, and so it was required that the basins, the proposed basin location, be shifted closer to the to the residential building, which is just going to have some design implications, but should be able to be catered by the applicant. Finally, the plans were shared with city staff, and there's a couple comments both from Public Works Director as well as the project manager in the Public Works Department. A couple different comments there about some of the site design, but also some of the stormwater elements as well, all included in the staff report. That's it from me. Thank you.
Rob, do you mind going first?
Sure.
Try and mix it up here some.
No, that's fine. Happy to. I'll try to keep this not bouncing around too much, but here. First question is the access road on the west side of the property. What's the phasing of that? And have we seen any details on what that's going to be?
So the main driveway. Mm-hmm. So I believe that will have to come through. I think that's part of our GDP approval was to get an approval of the private drive. That is being coordinated by the seller. In our offer to purchase, we had talked through, that the driveway either has to be there or the seller is going to have to escrow, money, 120% of estimated cost to get the drive going at the same time. So the status of the driveway is being handled by the seller themselves, and they're working with Snyder Engineering, I believe. I think that's the name of Mike Calkins. Yeah. And so I believe that the plans that we had submitted are plans from Snyder Engineering, and that will be what that's what they currently have planned for the road. But in terms of, it'd be good to get your feedback on what's going to be needed, for when we come back in terms of that private drive.
Well, I don't know if I can answer that completely, but I think boulevard trees and lighting and safe crossings are kind of the major things that we'd want to see on something like that I would want to see on that. I'll speak for myself.
When you say boulevard, so it is a private drive.
Sorry.
You're talking about,
yes.
Yeah, so on the landscape plan, do we not have trees on the drive itself? Okay. So they'll have, when they come back, I'll talk to the seller and coordinate with them on what's going to be expected, and Doug will help me with that. I hope that what will be expected to be seen on that plan, and we'll also have to coordinate with the seller on when they're going to have their plans coming through for the road.
Okay.
Or if that will be just included with our PIP plans. If we'll take kind of the lead on what that road is going to look like when it goes in. So then. But we'll follow up with them. Okay,
great. And the eastern drive, that's going to get reconfigured up in that northeast corner. Now that's not going to happen, I understand that. Does this meet code requirement for emergency vehicles?
It shouldn't be an issue. We are actually going to have our engineer do a turn calculation to make sure, and Verbicker, who we're working with, has worked with the city and works with the city a lot. So in terms of like what sort of vehicles need to be able to turn around, we do think that there's enough space and the drive is set up to have proper turnaround. But that would definitely be something that we'll include with our application.
Great. I would try to those hammerhead parking lots where you have to back out in kind of dead ends. I would try to maximize as much room you could gain out of there. It looks kind of shallow at the moment. Something to look at. We
do run into a little bit of an issue there with the 30-foot no grade, or the 75-foot setback with Carp C.
Can you go up to that line?
We can. I think we can move it back. We'll extend it.
Yeah, I realize you can't go too far, but I think a little bit goes a long way in a tight parking lot.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's a way for us to pick up some additional parking stalls as well, to get a couple more there too. So that was one of the things that I noticed as well. We could move that back. Even 5-6 feet would count, go for a lot.
Okay. Speaking of that, in general, it's nice to see dimensions on the site plan as well. Just as a note, the accessible parking, it seems like that could be flipped to the west to get closer to that major entrance.
Okay.
It looks like, unless there's a reason for it to be further to the east. Trying to keep this somewhat related here. Looking at the lighting plan, I think For the drive areas, everything looks fine, no issues. I was wondering if there's any plans for lighting in the back area, in the terrace, playground, connecting paths areas, or if that's going to be wall packs.
We didn't have any lighting plan for the play areas at this moment.
What about the outdoor patio space? Will that have exterior?
Yeah, that we would have just exterior lights on the building.
Okay. And then the 6 units on the southern side, the townhouses over there, I don't know if that would deem having another site lighting there, but it's kind of the one area that's kind of left out of the photometrics.
Okay.
And then I had a question. You have 2 different light. I think I just realized my own question. I saw you had 14 and 16-inch poles, but it looks like you're putting some on 2-foot bases for snow removal issues. So that checks out. That's on me. Okay. The grading on by the eastern townhouses. I didn't do a thorough review, but it looks pretty flat over there. Just to make sure, and I didn't see any inlets there. It looks like there's a break. I don't know if there's going to be curb cuts there, or for that. It looks like just that southern portion.
Okay.
Just curious if there's something to look at. I don't know.
Yeah, we can have our engineer take another look at it and see if there's adequate grading.
Okay. Or a structure or
Yeah,
a
that's
curb
not a
cut or
problem.
something. If you
No,
put a
that's
curb
fine.
cut and it was graded, it might just grade straight to that bioretention area. Which is another question I had. It shows on the plan as a piped kind of overflow that goes to the wetland to the southeast and on the north end there. Would that have to be? But I know you have a weir structure in your details. Is that going to be below grade? Is that going to get piped over there, or is it going to be a weir structure and above ground?
Typically, it would be like the storm in a storm pipe that's going to bring all that water into the bioretention basin versus a big runoff.
Okay.
But I can
I'm no expert. I don't know. It seems like if you could keep it above ground, I don't know. Something to consider. I don't know the answer to that, but it just seemed like if it's an overflow and there was a weir structure, it could just overland since it's the very corner of the site. Okay. And you said there's going to be electrical charging stations. Was that in the underground parking or the surface lots?
We're looking to put some in the underground parking.
Okay. In general, we usually advise to at least run conduit for some exterior stalls if there is a possibility that there would be charging stations in the future. A lot easier than ripping up concrete.
Sure.
Let me flip through here. Actually, I'll stop right there, and if I have other things, I'll raise my hand.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Susan?
Okay, well, yeah, I had the same comment about the EV stations, but also just bike racks on the outside.
We typically put bike racks below and on the outside. Yeah, there'd be both. Yeah.
They'll be placed somewhere.
And when we come back, we can list how many we would put underground because obviously it's not listed on the site plan what will be underneath the building, but I can put that in the letter of intent for next time.
And the play area, what kind of surface is that? Are you thinking?
Well, I think it's going to have to be some sort of pervious surface. So whether or not it's going to be a grass area or we put like some sort of gravel, but it'd have to be, or maybe it would like a mulch or something along those lines. But it's not something that we have to figure out exactly what's going to work
You're
there.
not envisioning any structures there then other than the structured playground?
That's more of just like an open play area.
Okay. Yeah, I was just wondering about basketball hoops, that kind of thing. So they're not really
We weren't intending to do like a basketball court or anything like that back there.
okay. So what about the green space change that Doug alluded to, talked about?
Yeah, I have to look into that. I mean, really, the site plan, hasn't changed. Yeah, it hasn't changed. So the maybe it was just, looking at it. Maybe it was calculated differently. I can check into that and just kind of verify what the delta is. But we really, we really haven't changed anything unless they're taking out the basins from green space, because they all were behind the 30-foot, and now they're moved up. So it's just something I have to look into and figure out. But we haven't, besides moving the basins to where they're at now, we haven't changed anything on where the buildings are located or the size of the buildings.
Yeah. And so speaking of the basins, that was one question raised by staff, that one that's very close to the play area, does that create any kind of hazard unless it's going to be fenced off or something?
Well, typically they're a dry basin, and just kind of it's overflow, and so there'd be probably maybe a 7 or 8 foot slope. We have one right now in front of our project in Fitchburg, and it's not fenced in, and it doesn't look unsafe. The sidewalks go right past it, and so I don't foresee that being an issue. And those, I think, once we just got our soil reports back about a week ago. That was just after we sent this in. So by the next meeting, or when we come back, we'll actually be able to have a really good idea of the size of those basins, and if they are able to be shrunk, or if we can move them around. But I'll make a note to keep that as far away from the play area as we possibly can.
Okay. And the parking question, the 7 tandem stalls, or so we have stacked parking underneath the building. How do you envision that working? We have one car parked in front of another.
Yeah, we've done that in a couple of our projects where we envision that one unit will have multiple cars, and they'll actually get a discount from actually having to buy 2 stalls or rent 2 stalls. This way they can basically pay about the same for having space for 2 cars.
So you see them as being tied to the same unit?
Yeah, I mean, quite honestly, I think this site is overparked. Plus, we're going to have other commercial uses that are nearby that are not going to have a lot of night or weekend use, and so I would be very willing to trade out parking for green space. I think if we get rid of the access point to the road, that's about 3 additional stalls. We're going to extend that one piece right next to the eastern townhomes back to the lot line. That should get us another 2. I mean, so that's 5 stalls there. I mean, ideally we wouldn't have 63 underground stalls. I mean, we'd like to really keep it to the building footprint. With the tandem stalls, we have to go underneath the patio, which is quite expensive. So we're trying to just maintain the required amount of stalls. But at the same time, it would be great to find a solution that doesn't require the tandem stalls. But to meet the number of stalls per the ordinance, that's kind of the solution that we're coming up with at the moment.
Well, if they are needed, then that would be a way to do it, I guess, to tie it to the same unit. And another question: the privacy fence. What kind of material were you thinking of for that? The one between the Shell station and the parking?
Typically you'd get that like the white, like I don't know if it's PVC, but we've also done cedar. I do see that one of the comments from staff was to go away from cedar. So naming what fence works best, we'll put that on our plans for next time, and so it's clear what type of fence we're going to be putting in.
Well, I guess I wondered. About, in addition to that, I can see a fence is a little more secure as well as private, I guess.
Yeah.
But if there could be some additional screening, like arborvitae, something like that.
Oh, sure, like on the landscaping?
Yeah, to just go right up along the fence, so it would be there as an additional.
Yeah.
Would be something.
Yeah, I can take a look at the landscape plan and make some changes as necessary. And then I think the privacy fence will extend, past that other entrance that we're now losing.
Yeah,
so it's going to come up and go over.
Yeah, it looks like That's
so we'll extend it up and and we can add some landscaping to that area as well.
Okay, I think that's really all I had. Otherwise, I appreciate the design and what you've done with adding the brick. So I think it was.
Oh, thank you.
You're anticipating this mic ring?
Well, at some point.
All right, Chris.
Sure. The first thing I'd like to talk about is that east access that the DOT says you can't have anymore.
Okay.
Now, if I understand it right, you're landlocked without that, because without this road and other lot, I don't think they can unilaterally come in there and just take away access to a road. Now, the reason I say that is because it was kind of important, we looked at it before, they had two ways in and out of this in case of emergency. And eliminating that means there's no emergency access if needed. So I think you'd have a very strong case to go back to the DOT and say, hey, we have an easement. We're willing to work with you, but give us emergency access there. So there's some way for fire, police, whatever. If something happens, there's a second way out of this place. We talked about that during the original one, that it is important to have a secondary access. So I think that would certainly be worth pursuing. I know they can't unilaterally take it away. Now, they have a lot of authority. They can tell you how close it can be to the highway, which is right up there, and it's way too close to the Shell station driveway. We would never allow that. But if it were an emergency access and controlled, say, by fire or police or both, I think it would go a long ways for just being able to have a second way out.
Well, we could do, so there is not an easement. And they gave us an explanation of that, where the DOT back in 1990 or something along those lines, we're working through with the Whitehorse family, and that's how they got the 25-foot parcel that's there. But so it went down and recorded as a parcel, but something happened where they changed their minds, or something didn't move forward as the way it was supposed to. There is no easement. But what we could do is, instead of extending a privacy fence there, is we could make it so that emergency vehicles can still utilize. I mean, there's still concrete there. It's still a driveway. We could build right up to it on our lot line, and make it for emergency vehicles. And then, when the DOT decides to do something with it down the line, we still have, we can say we have access out here. So we can still set it up so it has emergency access and kind of go across property that's not ours, but there's no legal easement on that site, and
Funny how they could allow a landlocked parcel. We don't allow them without frontage or access to a public road.
Right. And yeah, I can share that information that I have from DOT with staff.
Well, I would just work with them, see if we can't just have emergency access there. I think it would behoove all of us to have a second way in and out of this.
Okay, yeah, I can work through that, definitely.
I don't think we need it necessarily for the daily use of the residents, but I think it would be nice for, like I say, emergency. Okay? I'm, unlike Rob, I'm going to be totally out of order. It's just the way I have it written down. The green space differential, could that be that you added an outdoor patio and the walk pass we asked for, and a few things like that, and that could come into the calculation? Because I think before you didn't have that stuff in there.
It's possible. I mean, we ended up I think we were coming in from this committee 3 times.
Couple.
And so it depends on when that first calculation was made. And do we add, I think the patio was always planning to be there, and
might not have been that big.
Really, the play space, to me, when we did it, was just going to be green space that the tenants could use. I mean, that was the main purpose of it, versus maybe being like a sporting court or anything like that. It was just to identify an area for green space that people could use. So maybe that just needs to take a look at that and how they calculated it.
At the end of the day, I'm not real worried. There's adequate green space here. I know you were trying to reconcile, Doug, between the two, and you haven't done anything to change it, other than added the things we've asked for, and I think it's about the same as it was before, and I don't think it's an issue that we need to spend an incredible amount of time on.
Okay.
Random comment, I like that you exceeded the minimum points. That we always try to explain this is minimum. Each site's different. I like that you exceeded in the things you did. One comment, and I'm just really surprised Rob didn't mention something, but
Coming back to it.
a lot of your canopy trees, I think there's like 9 birch trees.
Okay.
And birch trees are really short-lived. They don't have a really long life, and I would think that, I'll defer to you, but I think there's a lot of other canopy trees that would serve you a lot better here. And birch are nice, or for a specimen tree, but I don't think I'd use a lot of them for canopy trees. So, staff comments, you hit the fence, the speed humps. I don't know, you think you'd put a speed hump? Well, let's just talk about that whole road. Obviously, that road has to be approved before you can be approved to do anything. So the one you're talking about. So however you work that out with the White Horses or wherever you're doing, we can't approve your project without access, with that road. And so all the items that we talk about on the road are important because that has to get approved for you to be able to have a project to build.
Right.
And, you know, if you decided to take the lead on it, that would be outstanding because it'd come back here as a single package. We could do it all if you took the lead. If you don't, then they're going to have to get in and at least be approved before you get approved.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think it would be, I mean, we're the first ones to the table. I mean, I think there's 2 other projects that the Lisa Seller is saying is coming along. And this is the same conversation that we had with the CDA. So we don't know for sure when those projects are coming forward, but we know that, you know, we're looking to start construction and the road needs to be there. So
Perfect.
We can get onto the site.
And so the speed hump was one of the things staff talked about that. I don't know how you feel about it, but they're feeling that at that crosswalk, a speed hump would be nice to protect the pedestrians.
Okay.
So just when you're looking at the road design, you might want to consider that. You said you have borings. How's your groundwater?
It varies,
Are
but
you going to be okay on your underground parking?
yeah, I mean, I think that's not, I mean, the way that the building's being designed, and when I talked with, you know, both our proposed builder for the project and with our engineer, they don't foresee that being a problem. I mean, I think we're about 10 or 15 feet below for groundwater, but I can double check.
Okay, and your underground parking is going to go down 10?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, I think the underground parking will be about where they have registered for groundwater, but I'll bring it back up with them as a concern.
Just for your, it's something else for you to look at in your design, what collection system you have to be able to make sure you stay dry.
Okay.
A question, I guess, for staff is when we went up the GDP, we talked about having a substantial commercial component to this. So this is all residential, so when the other ones come back, then they're, you said in your staff report, but I just want to reiterate that we're expecting commercial projects.
Yes, and that, I've heard a few different proposals, but certainly the predominant use, if not the exclusive use, would be commercial at this point. Yeah.
All right, thank you. And then your on-site management, that's permanent?
Yes.
Not just to lease up or anything, but that you have full-time
Correct.
on-site
I mean,
management?
The size of the property calls for it, but yeah, we would have you know, a manager on staff for the project. And management of tax credit properties is vital because the biggest risk that we have as developers once it's done is getting those tax credits to the investor, and management can, you know, really make issue of that if someone who's moving into the building that doesn't comply, you know, income-wise, or if there are issues at the property, you know, that affects us with WIDA and getting additional tax credits. So we definitely, you know, for a project this, it would have it, but we would have on-site management throughout the life of the project.
Okay, that was the question. Well, it'll extend beyond once you get your tax credits and the things that you need to get out of, they'll still be here.
Right. I mean, again, with 75 units at the project, it makes, it definitely calls for having someone located on staff, a full-time person on site.
Okay. Commenting to the tandem stalls, I have no issue. I think it's fine. I think they're going to people, residents that even if they don't want it for another car, they're going to want it for something. So I don't think it'll have any issue filling those up and having people that want to use them. CDA, you mentioned you met with the CDA. So you're talking to them because one thing we usually ask for is that there's at least some understanding before we come through with final approvals to know that it's a viable project with CDA.
Yes, and I would say I think final timing is still to be determined here on the PIP with a couple other items coming through, but there's going to be at least, so there's been an informational presentation meeting with the CDA to kind of talk through the project. Preliminary numbers, I'd say, were shared as well, expectations, but there'll be at least one more CDA meeting, I would expect, with numbers that are submitted to our consultant ahead of time.
Good, thank you. You know, you stuck right to what we talked about in the GDP, and it looks good. I mean, you're right on with what we talked about earlier, so thank you.
Thank you.
Corinne?
Well, I think it looks great. I really think the connections that you have within the site are going to make a difference and just bring it all together. So I really appreciate that you did take that into consideration. As far as my questions, let's see. So we've already talked about the two items that Doug mentioned in the staff report. I guess the question that I had was about the lighting as well. I think it would be good to think about having I don't know much about what kind of lighting you can do, but a couple of lights on the path might be nice, just because if somebody is having like a cookout on the patio or something, and then they have to go back to their townhouse or, to the front side of the apartment, like just having something that you don't need a ton of illumination, but just something to light the path, I think would be helpful. I was wondering as well about in the drawings, and maybe you said this and I just missed it, but on the fourth floor plan on the south end, there's like is there a community room? Is that what that big space?
The community room is on the first floor. When I look at, so that was one of the things that I was going to talk with Kenothi Bruce about, because I think there's that floor plan actually does show a community room on the fourth floor, so I just needed to confirm that that space isn't there, because when you look at the renderings of the building, there isn't a setback on the fourth floor, and so I was a little bit confused by that as well, and we'll get it addressed for next time. We kind of bounce back and forth on this, and would love feedback from the commission. On one hand, it would be great to have the fourth floor have the community space, because I think the views there are going to be really nice of the lake. On the other hand, we've experienced, especially with these townhomes, accessing the community space, that having it on the first floor would also be easier, and with the support service folks that are going to be at the property, maybe it makes more sense to have all the community space on the first floor. And Kevin, maybe you can address your thoughts on that. But I think as of right now, those plans are actually showing the community room in two areas, and we'll just have to get that corrected for next time.
Yeah, it was our intention originally to consider a community room on the fourth floor, but you're right, it has been relocated on the first. So we can update the floor plans accordingly.
Okay, so then they would just be the apartments similar to the second and third floor?
Yeah, that footprint would carry all the way up. It should carry all the way up to the fourth floor as well.
Okay. I do think it would be nice, like you said, to be able to see the wetland and the e-way and the lake, but understand the considerations you have there, so I don't know. As far as the landscaping plan, I was looking at the species of trees that you had by the playground, and you had, I'm not finding it right now, but you had like the white pine right by the playground, and I think there was a walnut right by the playground, and I guess I was just thinking of all the stuff that falls from those. And it might not be really fun to run around on the play area if it's full of pine needles, so I think that's what it was. So maybe, switch up. If you want an evergreen, just have one that's not gonna be quite as, drop as many needles. I think let's see. And I think that was all of my questions and comments. The rest were addressed. I really liked the B-Cycle edition. I love that you're thinking about how to make these connections. That was, a really big discussion we had, and that's great. So, I think that was it.
Thank you, and I think we can, get some site lighting for the path that, allows for that illumination in the back. So you're right, in case someone wants to walk back through the property, which is why it's there, we can have some lighting along the path.
Brandon.
A lot of people have covered the comments that I would have brought up. I could go one way or the other about the tandem parking stalls. I had a shotgun driveway for a long time, and but I think you're right. You'll probably find people who will be interested in those spots. I also agree with you, the trying to figure out a way that you wouldn't need those. I valued the amount of landscaping that you were putting on this parcel. I share the concern about the road. I'd like to know a lot more about the road. I think it's unfortunate not having the second access. I think the thing, since I'm the new commissioner of this, I hadn't seen this plan before. I sat with this and was just thinking about this being residential. That's a really difficult area to, kind of have a residential project in general. If there was sound deadening, like because the Beltline's right there, who's the responsible party for like when you've got these sound deadening walls that line highways and roads? Is that Public Works? That be DOT?
I think those usually fall within the DOT right of way, don't they?
I didn't know if you were looking at me to answer that. And so,
It's usually a state or
The
federal
DOT
highway.
used to put them up anymore. Any developer is putting any residential by any street, they're responsible for it. The DOT doesn't put them up. They retrofit the old neighborhoods, but they say, new neighborhoods you're putting near a highway, that's your problem. So they want the applicant, if you feel sound deadening's necessary, they want the applicant to put it in.
That's a very noisy area. I mean, you've got Stoughton, you've got the Beltline. There's a lot of hardscaping. I think I'd be interested to see something that was, an intentional, good faith effort about sound deadening in that area, as well as light. There's traffic on that Beltline all the time. You're going to have a lot of incidental light that's going to be, coming off of roads that are traveling there along the Beltline. I will say that area of town has never felt the safest or most secure area of town either. I don't really know. You've got plenty, I think, as it relates to site lighting. Again, getting back to interest about the road. One of the comments that you made, Doug, had to do with sort of this being isolated from city services. I think really understanding what pedestrian flow, how people who are living in this community would remain connected to community services. There's a lot of things that are to the south of Broadway. The clinic's right next door. There's a laundromat that's just a block down. But crossing, knowing that you're going to be putting residences here, especially children, how we're being intentional about making sure we're remaining connected to, crossing Broadway. I think those are the things that if I put myself there and I'm living in one of these units, especially if this is workforce housing, this might be one of the only homes I might be able to afford. I'd like it to be a kind of an oasis, place of relief. So, sound and light from a very loud community or loud space around that area. It's a little bit of a hostile space, I think, especially if I was a kid. If I was a kid growing up in that area, those are the things that I'm thinking about. So, yeah, sound deadening and light pollution and how it's going to remain connected to other city services. So, especially with things related to that road, those would be things that I'd be interested to see in future plans.
yeah, and it'd be great to have you out at the site if you had time to stop by. I mean, we're a little bit further away from the Beltline than the Trixa building is. One of the things that I think is really thought through for our design is that we have the shorter buildings that are closer. So as the Beltline is above that sound, I think we'll go above the roof of the two-story building, and then you're right, it will get to the 4-story, and so it's just something we have to keep in mind as we get that distance away from the Beltline.
Yep.
In terms of lighting, I think our buildings are really well laid out, where these townhomes won't have a majority of their windows kind of facing the Beltline. There will be some windows there in the design, but a majority of the housing units are not going to see that light, but for maybe that last unit on both sides of the two townhomes, and then anyone who's maybe in the apartment building and some of those units facing the Beltline. But we were conscious about light, and we really wanted to have extra trees put there. There's a lot of really mature trees already on site that are going to serve as some light protection, and then the additional trees that we're adding, hopefully over time, we'll do that as well. But we'll continue to take a hard look at that just to make sure. And with our home funds, there are sound requirements with HUD and the decibel levels, so we're going to have to be able to prove that the units that are that close to the belt line are below, I believe it's 65 decibels. And so whether that becomes something that we have to add to those units to really deaden that sound, it's going to be required by housing and urban development for the funds that we have.
65 decibels is still a pretty high threshold. So I think it's like 80 decibels is the OSHA threshold or something like that. 65 is still pretty high, but
and that's an outside. Yeah, that's an outside. So it's not 65 within the home.
Okay. Yeah, I'd be more than happy to visit your site.
Okay, great. Yeah, that would be. We'll try to schedule that with you.
Sure. Yeah.
All right, any other?
No.
Oh, sorry.
You must have something about land.
I didn't get. I got other things. The B cycle. Maybe I missed it. Where is that? Where are you planning on locating that?
We haven't put that on the site plan yet.
Okay.
We can. I mean, I think so. This when we did with Fitchburg, we put it in a place where I felt like the community could access it, because really it should be for the community as well, not just our property. So ideally, it would be somewhere where it could be easily accessible by someone who doesn't live at the property, but then also close enough where it's really easy to get to. And with B-Cycle, it does come with the free memberships for the residents, which is great. But any feedback that you have on where you think would be a good location, we would definitely take that under consideration.
I don't have any advice as to where it should go. I find it interesting. I think it's great that it's there for the residents. I don't see how it ties into other community use. It seems like a kind of a dead-end location.
Okay.
I don't know what the commercial or retail use is going to be. Maybe that will drive more circular use of these B-cycle stations, but if it serves these users, then that's great. Kind of to Brandon's point, I question the location of this residential project, period. I like its goals in providing affordable housing and workforce housing. I'm all behind that. But I think it is a hostile environment that's going to be very loud. I think adding evergreen landscaping to the perimeter is key, because it's going to be hard to dampen that noise. I don't know how you intend to do that, but it's going to be a loud property. Trista is a little different because it's across water too, which carries noise a little bit and kind of amplifies that sound. But we're far enough along that it's here, and I think that you've done a nice job with the site. But having evergreens along, like Corinne stated, along the play area, kind of that whole courtyard area, as much as you can kind of cloister that from the south, I think would be to the benefit of the residents. The southeast townhomes, actually all the townhomes, is there any plan for separation of the back of the properties? Is there like individual space accommodations for each one of those units? And if there is, I have seen like separate, privacy fence that goes X number of feet out just to give certain privacies. Just a consideration, or maybe that's already been considered.
And Kevin, do you want to speak to that?
Well, yeah, each townhome does have their own privacy fence. You could look at doing a privacy fence between the patios. They are set up to be more individual gathering spaces just directly outside of each unit. But we'll have to study that to see how it would interact with the overall site layout for some privacy fencing without trying to keep them from having seen two employees.
Okay. Yeah, seeing that on the final plans, what the kind of plans are for those spaces, I think would be beneficial as well. Oh, not to belabor it, the playground space, I know there's equipment shown there, but that can't go there because it wouldn't fit. I know it's just a placeholder. Is there going to be equipment
In the play structure area?
in that? Yeah, in the play area, that 40 by 60 area.
Oh, no.
Just in this.
No, that's
Just
just
in
supposed
that-
to be like a green space. Like a coordinated green space where the tenants could utilize an open green space.
Okay, so it's just
It-
open.
it
It's
should
just
be- it
open
should be-
space.
Yeah, it should be green.
I would
but
just
it's listed as like
Take that off and leave it as green space.
Okay.
Because it's lawn. It sounds like no equipment. It's just lawn space. So there is no official amenity outside of the green space for play.
Above it, we're looking at doing a play structure.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Well, in those areas, you're going to have impact attenuating surfaces, and you can't just put. You can put pea gravel, but it's not very good. But you'd probably want to use an engineered wood fiber, is what you're looking for. The kind of wood chip stuff.
Sure.
And those have different fall ratings depending on what you have. And you need 6 inches, 6 foot clear from every hard surface
Okay.
from the equipment that goes in that space. So as it's shown right now, it would not be okay for kids to play on. But I understand that's not the actual equipment probably there, but just for your planning. The landscape plan, I think Chris's comment was good. I had 2 birch trees fall on my house in the last couple of years, so I love them, but I hate them. The privacy fence along the north property line, you're getting tight on space there. Maybe you can work with the northern property owner to encroach on their land potentially. If it's going to be a landscape barrier, if it's a fence, that's a little more difficult. But I don't think you have room for both, at least for the whole portion of it, the way the site is laid out currently.
Okay.
But whatever you can do there, I think is good. I would look at utility conflicts and lighting conflicts with your landscape plan. You have trees located in some locations where there's light posts, and those things get adjusted in the field, I think, but something to look at now. I think I'm done for now.
Given all the comments that were shared tonight, I think many of them have been addressed in some of the different comments that I had written down at different times. And I would say I was not necessarily a fan of residential in this area when you guys first came through, but I think what we mentioned at that time, like after it was decided that this was approved, the GDP moved forward, I think you heard from a few of us of like, we're going to now dig in and make it the best project we can for the location. I think you guys are on your way. I think it's a great project. You clearly listened to a lot of the feedback and incorporated it. So besides some of the comments that were shared here tonight, I don't have anything else. Chris?
I have a couple of follow-ups. I think the first
Your
one-
mic. We gotta get you on record for this.
Sorry. First, we probably should have given you a better explanation, Brandon, because
Yeah.
you weren't here. So
You walked right into that.
This came in, and they weren't kidding when they said they're here 3 times. It was controversial. There's a lot of diverse opinions. And at the end, we approved the GDP for this use. So once we've approved that, they have a right to put this basic plan in here. That's already been given. It's approved by us and the council. So at this point, they're just coming back for the final details. So whether or not there's residential here isn't a question, if they choose to go ahead. What the question is how do we do it best and make the best neighborhood we can? So, I mean, your comments are great. All these things I'm trying to buffer it, they all make a difference. And I think, honestly, if you do schedule a visit, it'd be nice to coordinate that with Doug and let us all know about it, because most of us probably wouldn't mind standing back there and listening to the traffic or the lack of it. It might help. I think all the comments about the screening from the Beltline noise are fully appropriate and things to look at. One thing I forgot to mention, we always mention, is the lights. We prefer if you can keep them on the warm scale. You're doing LEDs, so just keep them warmer lights when you do that. I'm going to throw in my 2 cents on your community room. You're surrounded by beautiful wetlands. And mosquitoes and all kinds of things love all those wetlands. So to me, if you can get something up on the 4th floor where you enjoy being outside, they don't always find you up that high. So it's just something to consider. When you can have a nice area to sit outside and you aren't being just inundated by the creatures that come out of the wetlands, it's a consideration. And that's something I would hold you to, but it's just in your thought process and what you choose to do. Please when we get the final one, could we have a little larger print on some of these? That landscape, what do we call it, the schedule?
Oh, I think we did have a second
Oh.
here.
There was a blow up.
It is.
We did mention that last
Yeah.
time, and so maybe we just
It
scratched
does.
it.
There is a page.
They got part of it, it's just really hard.
Yeah.
They added a whole page
Yeah,
for
I
you,
did.
Chris.
Just had to put 'em- look at them together.
We didn't put it in this packet.
I'm sorry. Oh, I see it now. And that was it. Just the decision. I mean, if you do schedule one, might be more people that want to come out and see it. You could probably coordinate that with Doug, I would suspect.
Try to get that done before it snows. But
Well, there's still a lot of traffic out there.
yeah, yes.
I did want to add one more specific comment about sound. So just to be very specific, there's an on-ramp there, and late night, yeah. So not only are you